Welcome to Transio's webinar on post-secondary planning. Our intention today is to help counselors improve your post-secondary counseling, both college and career, and have 100% of your seniors with the post-secondary plan when they graduate. After 20 years as a college counselor and department chair, the biggest thing I get when I talk to counselors is, how do you do what you do? So we wanted to focus today on, with everything else you have to do with academics and all the responsive services you have to do, all the issues after COVID and mental health, how do you add the college and career counseling into your day to make it effective? It's something we all want to do, but it just seems like we never have time to get to it. So that's what my counseling partner and I are going to be talking about. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Ann Herbner. I'm the Education Services Manager here at Transio, and that just means I'm in charge of everything regarding our college product. But we won't be talking about Transio today. Before that, I took early retirement in 2021 after 36 years in education, the last 20 as a college counselor, department chair, AP coordinator, led our ASCA curriculum development. And I wanted to do something a little bit different. You can see there's a lot of stuff on there. All that means is I couldn't say no. So I did a lot of volunteering and speaking, met a lot of counselors all throughout the country. And that's really where my passion is helping public school counselors with a lot on your plate become better at post-secondary planning. And my partner in crime, when I was a counselor, is Shelley Custer, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, well, first of all, no, Ann probably can't say no, but she was targeted all the time because of her expertise. So there's a double part to that. I was very fortunate to work with Ann for 5 years of my 27 years that I've been working, and I've been a counselor the entire time. And my small schools actually taught half-time. So if any of you are from small schools, I get that you have to be everything. And at Papillion, it's been awesome because I have been able to focus post-secondary. I work with our academies. I do the career, the tech education, work with students that are not on the four-year college path. But I also took a break from education and spent some time in advanced ed at a community college, and then also at a seminary, where basically I served sort of as a school counselor at those levels as well.
Shelley came to us also. She had worked on the community college side, which is listed there on her bio. And that just gave us a whole nother level of skill and knowledge that we didn't have. So with the two of us, when she came on board, we had already had domain counseling. I'm going to explain what that means. And then we're going to talk about our classroom lessons and how we shared the junior interview to make sure 100% of our students, and that was usually about 400 seniors, how just the two of us got 100% of our seniors with a post-secondary plan. So what are domains? Now, we are not saying that this is the perfect way to do it. This is just one way to organize a counseling department. Instead of by grade or by alpha, we organized by domain. So we took the ASCA domains, the American School Counseling Association, academic, personal, social, and career. We split the 5 of us into these 5 areas. So we had 2 academic support counselors. So they took care, they did an academic lesson. So we had curriculum for all of the domains. They looked at progress reports, coordinated summer school, and handled the 504s, talked about academic advising. As part of the ASCA academic domain, I was our post-secondary or college counselor. You can see everything I handled there. We had a personal social counselor who was also an LMHP. She handled a lot of the personal issues, crisis intervention, mental health liaison, which as time went on, as you all know, the hospital in our town would coordinate with her on students who were hospitalized for mental health issues. And she also did small group counseling. I should also add to that, we had a fantastic social worker that helped us with all our homeless issues. Anyone who's dropping out, which we did not have in the state of Nebraska, you're not allowed to have students to drop out. She also handled group counseling, teen pregnancy, drugs and alcohol, all those issues. And then Shelley was our post-secondary counselor for careers, also did career classroom lessons, military. I did foreign exchange. That's a misprint. 2-year colleges, trade schools, apprenticeships, everything else under that. Shelley, what else would you add about domains?
Well, even though it seems like it could be siloed, this was not siloed. There's a lot of crossover. When I'm working with a student, I will look at their grades. I will look at their attendance. When the academic counselors will look at, meet with a student about grades and attendance, they'll take a look at what are some of their career interest inventory results, so that, we're all kind of crossing over. And of course, personal social spans the gamut with all of this. So we do work together in a lot of ways. And also just having people that are passionate about their role and their specific domain is very important. It allows us to be experts. And every time I get a 504 email from our central office, I shoot our counselors that work with the 504s that, hey, thank you that I don't have to read this email. And I hear back, thank you that I don't have to know anything about academies, or I don't have to know how to, so it really does allow us to specialize.
And we'll talk more about how we divide that time and get to know our students, but not everyone likes college. They don't want to write recommendations. They don't know about AP. And I taught AP English for about 15 years. So I knew about that. We'll talk about the response and crisis a little bit as well. Why did we choose this way to organize? When I started at Papillion, the department chair before me, we needed to improve our program. We did surveys with students, parents, community. And what we discovered was that we were spending 80% of our time on responsive services, kids walking in the door with crisis, but we weren't doing anything proactive. And when we looked at our records of the students we met with, we were only meeting with 20% of the student body. So there was no lessons. We were giving 100% of the students. You cannot meet with students individually to know all of your students. You need to go out to them to make sure everyone's getting the same skills. 100% of your students need to get lessons in personal social interactions, in academics, in college, in career. 100% of those students need that. So part of your goal is that proactiveness. And then you plan individual planning, individual services, and responsive and system support from there. Our post-secondary plan rate was only about 60%. Some of that was 4-year college, some was 2. The only way we knew what they were doing is their graduation exit survey. They would tell us, but there had been no counselor interaction with that. We had a secretary who was fantastic, but she was doing all the advising for college and had never been to college herself. She wasn't a counselor. And I have a big belief that counselors that still needs to be a part of what we do. And about 10% of our seniors didn't graduate on time. So we had kids slipping through the cracks in all of the areas. Shelley, what would you add to that?
Well, I think you've really covered it. What I'd add is probably a little bit later, but when you go out to the classrooms, students then in turn know you and they reach back out to you. Anne and I were a fabulous team because she is petite and I'm an Amazon. But it was fun because the students would say, I need to talk to the tall one. I need to talk to the short one.
Yep.
So even if they don't know our names, if they come in and they say, well, she was in my English class, then we have a pretty good idea of who to direct them to, because they'll bring their questions in.
And a lot of times those weren't questions about our lesson, but they made a connection with us. And they would come in and say, I need to talk to the tall one. And Shelley would be talking to them about a situation with their home or family. Mm-hmm. Now, just because Shelley was the post-secondary counselor didn't mean that she had to just talk about post-secondary planning. She would, talk to them. And if it was a bigger issue, then she would meet with our personal social counselor but it was a connection to bring those kids down to the counseling office.
Something crazy that happened after my junior lesson last October is a student came in and said, I need to volunteer. So we started looking at that, and then he started sharing his passion for what he was interested in. It snowballed between the other post-secondary counselor and I. This young man who has a passion for unions is right now we're at Lincoln, our state capital, and he is meeting the Secretary of Labor because the Teamsters Union invited him as their guest. And that came out of my junior lesson where he wanted to volunteer, shared his passion. We got him connected to different opportunities.
A counseling office needs to be an important part of your school climate. We're not just an add-on that for kids who are crying. It's not just about the criers. All students deserve both college and career preparation. So how do we know our students? If you're signed alphabetically, and I know you all out there do know your students if you're assigned alphabetically, we know that. And I worked for a little while with alphabetical. But a lot of times what you're doing is just meeting the kids who have a lot of needs personally, or changing schedules. So we knew our students from being in classrooms with them every year through special programs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then the junior interviews. And then how do they know us? The best quote I had was, if a parent would call our office, our secretary would say, they would ask, I need to speak to my son's counselor. And our secretary would say, your son has 5 counselors. What's your concern today? And if they said, well, we need ACT help, it went to Ann. Well, he needs to talk about an apprenticeship or the military. They would talk to Shelley. Well, he's having problems with the class. Then that would go to an academic counselor. So newsletters, email, social media, parent nights, all of those things created a communication. We just blasted it everywhere. So we weren't just something on the website. We were part of all those communications, every parent night, every staff development day. All those things went into making us an integral part of the school climate.
A fun thing
there, Shelley.
Yeah, a fun thing happened this year. A young man was granted an apprenticeship interview, completely off my radar because they changed some things at the central office. So I knew nothing. But he knew that if he'd never had an interview, he needed to come to the counseling center because somebody here can help him.
Yeah, if you don't mind listening to them in the background.
That was awesome. I loved that he came here. And of course, we helped him, and they knew that it was going to be one of the post-secondary counselors to help.
It does take a little while to get, an administrator with everything they have to do. If they have a problem with a student who's crying, they want to know, okay, his last name starts with a B, that goes to this counselor. That's the easy way to do it. And a lot of our administrators, it took a little bit to get them on board with it. And so you have to educate your staff. You have to educate your administrators. So again, our secretary was so valuable because she knew how to triage, just like a hospital ER. She knew how to triage where everybody goes. And of course, go ahead, Shelley, sorry.
Another thing that's really helpful is a department email, because then it comes to everybody and you can take it if it's yours.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm in a lesson all day and a teacher knows me from being in the classroom and says, hey, this student is having this problem at home, and sends it to me, but I'm in classrooms all day, I might not see it. So our tech office created a PLHS counselors email that went to all of us. So whoever was unavailable would answer, I'll take it. So we'll talk about the team approach here in a second. But if there's a crisis, if there's a student who needs help right now, you don't say, well, that's not mine. Everybody puts everything down and we work as a team to figure out who's on board to help this student. That's just what counselors do, as you all know. And you do that if you're alphabetical or by grade level, you do that as well. Yeah, I'm in charge of 11th graders, but if a 9th grader comes in and the ninth grade counselor is busy, you're not just going to send them back to class. It's the same thing with us. So like Shelley said, we were not that siloed. Let's talk a little bit about classroom lessons. So these are the lessons that I taught for every grade. So every ninth grade student saw me about a 4-year course plan or the academic counselor. And these are not hard and fast. These are ideas that you could do with every grade. So I used English because that's required every year. And then Shelley used, what subject did you use? Social studies?
First, yeah, I could use social studies for a freshman, but otherwise it was English.
Okay. So the English teachers need to be your friend, but you can always think creatively too. You could use advisements, any other way to get to kids. And, that's the biggest hurdle is for counselors is trying to get access to students. But if you have a real curriculum that needs to be evaluated and your district office says, yes, we need to do this, then that goes a long way. So we had the 4-year course plan. Then I talked about college testing to sophomores because junior year is a big tester. So you need to start with sophomores. Then in 11th grade, we did resume and essays, talked about campus visits. 12th grade, Shelley and I shared the college scholarship application process. And then I also went out and did a financial aid review with seniors. I was the only one that did that one. I think the biggest takeaway here is I had 17 sections of English for every grade. So it would take 3 or 4 full days of teaching to get through all those kids. And if you think about how much time you spend with individual planning, we were hitting 400, 450 kids in a week. So with real activities and real ways to evaluate that goes a long way with building up your post-secondary culture, college culture, or career. This is what Shelley would recommend.
A couple of thoughts that cross over to both of those. Now, and it's 20 to 23 sections.
Oh, geez.
Grade level. So it's more complicated than it was. Get those scheduled early. That is something I learned from Ann when I got here. I mean, we laid out the whole year in advance. And if you plan ahead with those teachers, I would say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. But sometimes they'd come back and say, hey, I have this. Could you come on this day instead? So you become their sub and now you are a gift to them. Or they plan a big essay to be handed in the day before and they spend the time you're in their classroom grading. You are a gift to them. So those are things that, get them on your side. So that's probably, one of the points I have with that. With my career lessons, that is my absolute passion. I want you to think about when I approached these, we were going through Toolbox for counseling, and I volunteered to create these lessons. And my first thought was, what does every student need to know at each grade level? And building on that. And on the previous slide, I added that college vocabulary and those things. You give them a baseline and they understand grade point average and those types of things as a freshman and getting involved in what an activities resume is. And then their sophomore year, they create that resume and you just build on it every year and you increase that vocabulary. So by the time they're a senior, they know associate's degree is this. A bachelor's degree is that. And it's always fun when a student comes in and you're like, you were paying attention, you know this information. But if you have the opportunity to have interest inventories at different grade levels, and there are things that are out there, that you can use from different places, but that career interest. Oh, Ann, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, just coughing, sorry.
Okay, no problem. The career interest survey that we did as a freshman was kind of like a learning styles, but we did explore a little bit what their interest was. And that's a great time to get them thinking about registration for their sophomore year. What classes would help them explore that area? Do you have some electives in that field and things like that? So that's a really helpful thing. My favorite interest profiler is the one I use at the sophomore lesson. Career interest profiler is based on Holland's self-directed search. I've been out of my master's program for a long time, and I've found a career assessment inventory that I like it better than that one. But again, it gives them some information about themselves, but also then there's that career connection. And that connection between like, what are they interested in? What kind of job are they looking for? Do they want to work nights, evenings? Will that career fit with that? We use a Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Again, hopefully you have options with those types of things. At that level, I really like to direct them to either the tool that we're using or the Occupational Outlook handbook, something. And my favorite piece that I tell students is that similar occupations or related occupations, that tab that sometimes goes overlooked, because students' knowledge, even my knowledge of careers, is narrow. There's so much out there, but connecting to that related or similar shows them some things that they probably never thought of. And then, as always, Anne was the driving force behind the post-secondary planning lesson. So really, I was just there to reinforce what was going on. It's very college focused appropriately. And so I worked more one-on-one with the students who were doing the military path or an apprenticeship or something like that.
What was great about our senior lesson is that we kind of individuated it. So we split the English classes. I took AP and honors, which were very college admission heavy, Common App, AP classes, all that kind of thing. Shelley took the classes that were non-honors. A lot of the kids in there were going to college, so we didn't want to leave them out because, we assume every child is going to college unless they choose something else. We don't want them to lose that opportunity. So she had the basics about college admissions, but then she covered a lot more about military and apprenticeships and careers than I did. So we kind of differentiated those lessons a little bit.
I always talk to students about, I want to open as many doors as possible. So we don't know if they're going to go through that post-secondary door. But the advantage I had with the classes I had, they didn't need to know about selective admission. They did not need to know about the Common App. Those things would have just been information overload. So it was very nice to be able to tailor those lessons to the students.
That took a lot of work, writing all these lessons and activities and all that. I will tell you that.
Still does.
So what do our events look like? Again, this is about being proactive and involving the parents in the process, but also giving students more opportunities to discover what they really want to do after high school. I always tell kids, we want you to get into college, but we want you to stay there. So what would happen before our program is that kids would just assume they were going to college. That would be one kind of kid. They would get there, drop out after a semester, and then flounder until they were in their late 20s to figure out what they wanted to do. Or they didn't go to college because they didn't have enough money or didn't know the process. And they would just continue working at the fast food restaurant and never really know what they wanted to do. So with parent events and student events, we expanded on our classroom lessons. So you'll see in the left hand, these were the parent events, speaking events that I did in the evenings. We normally had 350, 400 people at those events. I forgot to put on there, we had financial aid night, of course. So those events brought more parents in, got their kids involved, and a lot of students came with the parents for those nights. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see student events. These were either during the school day or at night. Whenever we're working with first gen careers, application workshops, those kinds of things, we wanted to do those during the day. I started Senior Sunday, so we advertised it like crazy. And I will say our secretary is fantastic at helping us with that. We had a college and career day on a Sunday for seniors and their parents. And they had a fair, and then the parent presentation was at the end of the fair. So we got everybody involved. College Day was May 1st. All the seniors wore their t-shirts of where they're going to college. We had lots of group pictures and I sent them to colleges, did a lot of social media with that. But we also had events during the day for other kids too, for the underclassmen. Lots of first gen programming and scholarship breakfast luncheons, college visits and special summer programming. Like there are lots of colleges out there that offer summer college credits or programs that give them access to college awareness that they might not have had before. We did college application workshops during the day. We had a big sign created and we would just sit in the library for 3 or 4 periods and seniors would come down with passes and work on their college applications. And we did FAFSA workshops at night as well. Shelley, do you want to talk about Access Your Future and the College Career Expo?
The College Career Expo is something that we piggybacked with our fellow district. So in the mornings 1 year, and then the next year we have it in the afternoons, but we bring in colleges, we bring in all the military branches, we bring in different businesses and industry. We have great support here. We'll have probably 60, 65 tables of different things that students can explore. We always tell students that we want them to find the most appropriate path for them and then help them, especially if it's college, to get there with the least amount of expense. So College and Career Expo is a chance for them to look at not only post-secondary options, but to look at different careers and industry and sponsorship programs and things like that. Very successful. We have our sophomores, our juniors, and our seniors attend for, it's logistically challenging. So for 20, 30 minutes, and we do it during the school day. The Access Your Future night, we have a collaboration with our local community college for career academies that I work with, but we also have a zoo academy and a health academy and a leadership academy. So there's lots of different academy options for students. Some are in-house, some are located at alternate. Obviously, the zoo academy is located at our city zoo. But that is an evening where parents and students can come to learn about different academy options and the academy application process.
So you can see between classroom lessons and our special events and programming, we create a lot of awareness and education for students and parents on what is available to them. So how do we then narrow those kids down and do the individual planning part? We used to meet with seniors, but you know how many seniors there are and everything else you have to do in the fall. By the time we get through meeting with everybody, we had scholarship deadlines passing and really weren't giving them enough time to look at all their options. So we moved it to junior year. So we start with a survey in the junior lesson that either Shelley or I are in the classroom with, a survey about their future plans, that they're going 4-year, 2-year career. We had some other questions about their career pathway, what they might want to major in, other things like that. We take that survey and create a spreadsheet. You'll see A, B, C, D there. You notice work is not on there. We don't give them that option. Now, there are kids that go directly to work. There's some on-the-job training things that are fantastic, but we want them to try to focus on something besides that. I had a student one time that said, this is all too much work. He had a 3.5 GPA. This is all too much work. My mom and dad just said I should work at Taco Bell with them. No, we're going to find something different from that. We split that list up. Shelley and I would sit down and look at all the 4-year, 2-year military apprenticeships. Now, just because Shelley worked with the non-4-year kids, that doesn't mean she didn't also work with some 4-year students. A lot of them went to the university or college in Omaha, and it was basic college admission. Shelley's a counselor. She knows all that too. So we would split the list up and have 30-minute meetings with all of those juniors. And we would add notes to our spreadsheet. And then we have an interview checklist, which I'll show you in a minute. We would complete that either online or on paper and upload that or put it into the platform that we use, whichever platform, if you're Naviance, Transio, whatever. And then that way is accessible to special ed case managers, other counselors, and of course, share it with parents and guardians. It took us, we usually started after registration in January. So, February, March, April, sometime to get all of those juniors in. It's hard. It's tough. But at the same time, we were doing those junior interviews, we were meeting with them about their schedules for senior year, referring any other issues to academic counselors. We did a lot with that 30-minute interview.
Couple things to add with that. If you can pull the grade point average along with their plan, or in this case, this year, I merged the two files. It's really helpful because, if you have a 2.0 grade point average and you're going to go directly to a four-year college, you should probably talk to me first. And, let's talk about, okay, should we start you at a two-year college and take some gen eds and things like that? So that's a very helpful. It also helps identify students who are probably not going to graduate on time with their class. And our numbers keep increasing. Our responsibility keeps increasing. So sometimes you got to say, okay, these are my priority students. We aim to meet absolutely with 100% of them. But it's tough, like Anne said. And a note in the fall. So because we have moved junior interviews to the spring this year, because it's hard to get them done, we actually started in December. I had about 24 of them done before we came back from break. But we still meet with seniors in the fall. It's just that this junior interview gives them a really great head start in their planning. And when they come in the fall, they know what questions they need to ask because they've basically been told, this is what you need to do. Here's your next steps.
It was also good to talk to them junior year because we could talk to them about ACT or SAT testing. I spent a lot of time talking about AP testing for May because I was in charge of that registration as well. And I could start both of us could start putting together our lists of students who may qualify for FAFSA or other scholarships that were in the process. There's a lot of scholarships out there you don't have to be Pell Grant eligible for that still are lower income. And so we would start taking notes in our spreadsheet about all of that. And Shelley helped me out with a lot of kids who, like she said, were on that 2.5 bubble, who may or may not really should go to four-year college, but maybe need to start at community college. And that does not mean a kid with a 4.0 needs to go to college. I had lots of students who said they wanted to do an apprenticeship or 2-year that had a definite career pathway in mind. Usually they'd already met with Shelley about it. And a classic example is I had a 4.0 who had already started our HVAC academy in high school. So he was finishing the rest at the community college and doing an apprenticeship. My air conditioner was on the fritz, and guess who showed up at my door? Tanner, fix my HVAC. He was 18 at the time. So he had a chance to do that early and meet with Shelley and already knew what he wanted. So this is an example of a junior interview form. You could definitely add more personal stuff on there if you want. And I can send this what we used to you. You had standardized tests, what they've completed. You notice there's GPA up there as well. Shelley also added on hers attendance, which was very important with the population that she worked with. How they're going to prepare. So it's important to talk about what they're going to do. Introduce test optional, talk about their transcript and resume, and have them start putting their college list together. If you have a platform like we did, then you can also do this in their platform, start adding colleges to their colleges I'm interested in list. We talked about majors, factors that are influencing their college list, which usually is money, family. My mom wants me to stay at home. We don't have money to go out of state. And so that can be a good opportunity to talk about school profile and the FAFSA and how scholarships and financial aid work. And then pushing them to do a college visit a little bit, and then all the other parts that I had done a classroom lesson with all of the students about. Remember, every student got a junior college lesson. Every student had a junior career lesson.
Also with those lessons, record those. So that's really helpful. If a student's not there, if a parent has a question, we try to make those recordings very accessible, just to refer back to and things like that. So that's just another layer in making sure that your information gets out. It's also very helpful with public relations. Like now parents like, wow, okay. You're really putting a lot of information out there. My child had this opportunity. They didn't take advantage of it. What can we do? So that's very, very helpful. I was thinking of something that you said, oh, with the attendance piece. So a lot of my students have attendance issues, obviously, but the ones that have great attendance, it's just awesome to say, my big thing right now, we're doing this online, so I'm typing this out. And if their attendance is incredible, I use the word phenomenal in all caps, and I don't know how to spell phenomenal. So they really get a chuckle when I have to ask Siri how to spell phenomenal, because their attendance is so good that I'm going to take that extra step. And it's just kind of a fun way to really affirm the students for making great choices.
I think it's, as a counselor, you're always going to have students and parents who complain to administrators. No one has met with my student about. My child has never had any college or career counseling. And all you have to do is go boop and send this to them. And you can also have them mark off that they read it. So yes, they have. It's right here. So it's one more way that you're reporting and showing how counselors are important in your school.
And very helpful to refer to special education teachers for transition plans, but I always pull this up and review it before every senior IEP. So I'm like, yeah, well, this is what we talked about, and it's been great.
And if you have administrators, teachers, school board members who have students in your school, and they start to see this kind of thing, they're like, wow, counselors are important in our school, and they just didn't have any idea. This is Shelley's group.
Well, actually, some of them are yours.
Mine too. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
The unrealistic frequently fall under that. I'm headed to four-year college. I'm going to be a doctor, and they're, obviously not taking the classes to prepare themselves for that path. But yeah, so the undecided, unmotivated, and unrealistic. I was kind of on an alliteration role there. You've all had where the families aren't supportive, and had a great example of, we'll just stay, and work with us at Taco Bell. We actually have families who tell their students, just drop out, your uncle got a GED. So we're trying to explain the landscape has changed. That is not an option anymore. If you don't have your GED, places won't hire you as a CNA, and they're desperate for CNAs. Our local, it's actually Sherwin-Williams, and maybe that's changed, but for a while, at least they had a national policy. You had to have your high school diploma before they would hire you. So, there's families on that end. Something else that I've got to thinking about while Ann was talking is the families who just think 4 years is the only path, and if my kid has to go to a college, there's, nothing but 4 year for an option. The specialization and the passion that you can do under domains. One of the best compliments I've ever received as a counselor is a young man told his mom that the 2 year bound students don't feel like second class citizens anymore. So, as you do, Anne was getting that information out there, but it was, everybody was perceiving that as the 4 year path. So if you can help families or students see that there are options, even if your family's not supportive for you. Sometimes the families aren't supportive because it's money, and they just think they can't possibly afford it. So we have to look for some solutions that will work. I've had students who they just cannot see themselves. They've had no role models in their entire family, even for graduating high school, let alone continuing into a college path or I try to help my students in my junior lesson differentiate between a job and a career. I joke that I'm the counselor that doesn't want them to have a job. I don't mean now, having a job now is great, but I want them to understand that you can get stuck in that job and you're not getting benefits. You're having to work multiple jobs for minimum wage. And what's a career look like? So trying to help them see themselves in that. I don't know what you guys are hearing, but oh, for the longest time, everybody wanted to be an influencer. I just want to do YouTube videos and real estate agents. There's only so many of those. So how do we help those people find their path? One of the things that we are very fortunate with here is those career academies. If their grades and their attendance are strong enough, we can get them into that and they can try out a career and get high school experience with it as well. But even if they didn't have that opportunity, an apprenticeship, let's get them paid. Most students are okay with that. I don't have money or I can't see myself paying to go to college, but if you're going to pay me and train me, that helps them to see that path for them. I also have like careers that, or jobs that will go on to that career thing. And we added this year to our newsletter, that amazing secretary that Anne has kept mentioning. She's kind of passionate with the kids who are on whatever path. So we put together, here's some alternates. If you don't see yourself going to college, here's a this, here's a that. I talk to my students about scaffolding their education. If they're being pretty unrealistic, let's take like one class. Let's take, and let's get that associate's degree. And then later, if you want to build on a, bachelor's degree and they can take their time with that. Also, let's be realistic. Let's look at those career research. What is the salary going to be? How much does it cost to become a doctor? How many years of experience? That sort of thing. So trying to find just those really real things. And when we serve our students, all of our students, about financial aid and scholarships, I think that helps some of these students to be like, okay, so if I can raise my grade point average, I could qualify for that potential scholarship, and that's going to open up a door for me. So this is a challenging group. My numbers were smaller. Anne met with a lot more students than I did, but sometimes I had to go back to square one and okay, let's look at some career paths and things like that. But it's also incredibly rewarding work.
So Shelley, how did you become an expert on the apprenticeships and the on-the-job training? Like if a counselor is watching this and they're in their community, how do they find or network to find apprenticeships and job training?
It is a process. And another thing I don't have up there is sponsorships. That's another thing. It's more the college approach to the apprenticeship, but an industry will sponsor a student, pay for their college, give them a job and things like that. And literally it is networking. It takes time. It takes connections. I did go to some like job fairs, and the people that we bring in for our college and career expo, we make sure that we promote their opportunities as well. So it's a lot of networking to figure that out. You can obviously go to websites, and see, and we're fortunate. We have unions that will mail us, here's when we're going to have our interviews and here's the criteria and that sort of thing.
And here's the other advantage to domains. You all get invites for counselor luncheons and counselor breakfasts or events from colleges. Well, apprenticeships, the trades, they do the same thing. And because I don't have to change schedules and worry about all the other parts of a counselor's day, I have the time to do that. And Shelley has the time to do that. And we work with our administrators a lot that if Shelley had an evening event to go to, then she would leave a couple hours early that day. So we had a little bit of some flexibility in that to really specialize in what we were doing.
Yeah, early on, I went to our community college, had like hiring events at the end of semesters or terms. They are on a quarter system. And I would go to those and just see what opportunities were available. So yeah, I put a lot of time into that, especially early on. Those connections pay off. And Anne had those connections at the four-year college level, at NACAC, she had all those, and I needed to make my connections as well. And if I recommend a student because they know me, because they know my standards, that student gets a head start.
A lot of our tech and trade teachers had speakers that came into their classrooms. Your school probably has that too. But the way we did it was the teacher would bring the speaker down to Shelley, and Shelley would host the event so that not just the kids in that class could attend, but everybody could attend. And we advertised those like college visits from college reps.
Yeah. We will have people coming in with, we have a diesel sponsorship program. They'll come in, we treat it just like a scholarship or just like a college visit. And I will look for students who are interested in diesel tech and send invitations out to those kids, and they come, listen, and typically get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is an important screen, so I'll let you guys read it on your own. But the biggest thing on this is communicate with each other. 80% of our students need from the counselors a schedule change or some help with a college thing. But you have students that need a little bit of everything. Most of our students know Shelley and me from classrooms and working their post-secondary plan. But we have students that need the academic counselors, and we have a section of students who use our personal social counselor a lot. So we had our student information system, or you could use your platform or share Google Sheet. All of the counselors need to have access to that. So every time you meet with a student, regardless, if it's a schedule change, someone comes in upset about a boyfriend breakup, whatever it is, that needs to be there. So when a student plants themselves in my chair, for no matter what reason it is, I pull up that notes and glance at it before I start meeting with that student. So I know what's going on, that, another counselor met with that student about this or what the plan was. So that's how we keep track of that. Now, if a student and I look and another counselor's met with them 35 times in a month, I'm going to give that counselor a call and say, hey, Johnny's in my office. And then the counselor comes over and grabs them. So making it accessible to all the counselors and our secretary is super important. So when an administrator comes over who's been meeting with Johnny, our secretary brings it up and says, Shelley's been meeting with him. That's how we know who a student goes to, is by those documented records. Anything else on that, Shelley?
Yes, something that we have started here, and I don't know if this was here when you were or not, Anne, but we have an online sign-in sheet. So when a student checks in with our secretary, we have two secretaries. This is a different secretary, but she's equally amazing. She puts their name, she puts their grade, what counselor they're here to see, and then there's a drop down for the topic. Is it personal social? Is it post-secondary? Is it schedule change? And that is awesome. So we have a signing in time and a signing out, which is great because any of us can check to see if a student made it down and who they saw. So obviously we're going to document everything after the fact. I actually use that tool to, I forgot I saw so-and-so, because I don't write everything down initially. But it's really great to be able to look at it and they go like, wait a minute, this kid came into me yesterday. Why'd they come and see so-and-so today? So that's been a great tool.
I think that the shared calendar on the next two is super important. We made a laminated calendar of every month that was as tall as me, which is not very tall, but we put that on our department conference room wall. And in August, we had already scheduled all the meetings for the whole year, all our big events. Shelley and I filled up most of it, but then the other counselors with other events that are important, like registration or times the personal social or the academic counselors were out in classrooms, that was all color coded on our wall. We also shared our Google calendars with each other so we could see who was in or out of the office. And we had a weekly meeting where we would have an agenda, any students that we needed to talk about. If there was a student that was very high need, that student would go on, the counselor who was working with that student would mention what was happening, what the plan was with that student, regardless on what the domain was. We all knew what was going on with all the students. And again, anytime you can meet with administrators to share big topics and important student information at an admin meeting is important. And weekly emails to staff and staff development days to update what you're doing is important. Anything else on that, Shelley?
I don't think so.
Okay, so how do we know we got to 100%? We created a graduation survey for all students, seniors, that they had to complete before they could get their cap and gown. Our secretary is the one that checked off and signed their form saying, yes, they did it before they could get their cap and gown. We asked questions about anything that you need to report to your district or your state, what their 4-year plan is, where they're going to college, who's their apprenticeship with, who's their job training with, and any other questions that you need, any climate survey, any other data about their satisfaction, their career pathways, their academics, all of that can be included there. Then after graduation, we would go in and sort and compile charts and tables and send final transcripts, create a readable data report that I usually did that on Canva and sent that to administrators and the district office. And then again, celebrate your results and publish it everywhere. So we went through our senior list and all of those seniors had a verified either a final transcript sent and their enrollment to a college, or Shelley had confirmed their apprenticeship or military, and we had 100%. What else would you add there, Shelley?
I don't have anything to add. I've had to do some of the data since you left, Ann, and I could add thank you for all your work because it's a lot.
It's a lot. But I like the data. I like to make, and again, it's about making sure every little kid every student does not drop through the crack. And, 9 and 10, we did a lot of education and awareness stuff. Then junior years, when we really started a spreadsheet with every student, and then senior years, when we checked those kids off and verified they all had a post-secondary plan.
I've been in a lot of districts and did not do this piece, and a lot of them were small, but there's a lot of people who do not know what happens, what counselors do, and giving them this information is so helpful. I really do feel like here people know what we do. The teachers know what we do. The administrators know what we do. Our families know what we do. It's important.
And when we're talking about domains, like I said, most students see me or Shelley, and a few of the other kids see a various amount of counselors. But a good example is we had a student one year who was national merit, 35 on the ACT, all AP classes. So definitely she saw me. She was also diagnosed as bipolar 2. She saw our personal social counselor. She needed a 504, so she saw our academic counselor. She was very panicked about a major, met with Shelley often. This student needed all 5 of us. So I'm a big fan of It Takes a Village, and this student needed a village. She needed all of us. I also, like to say that counseling has become more and more specialized. It is difficult, not impossible, but difficult to do all of the areas well. You can do a little bit of everything, but you know how frustrating it is. You could do better in areas if you just had more time. And our team approach and our way of organizing gave us more time to really be a specialist and help students more in our specific area without losing the personal touch.
And I don't often disagree with you, but I am going to disagree with you.
Please.
I was the jack of all trades in all my schools before I came here. And I can tell you, I thought I did a good 504 or SAT meeting. But once you get here and you see how an academic counselor has refined those skills and thinks of things, I mean, I go to ours all the time and be like, okay, what should I suggest here? Because they have so many more ideas. And I learned so much from you. The ability to specialize, to know that I don't have to know which colleges have gone test optional. I don't have to keep track of those types of things. I don't know that everybody can do it all well. I think we all try. I no doubt that we all work really hard at it. But if you can really specialize, it's a gift.
If you have questions, I'll be emailing this to everyone. If you are watching a recording or if you're on today, please reach out to me and I'll forward questions to Shelley, probably. If you want more information, I can send you our paperwork or, needs assessment that we did, or meet with you and talk to you about how you can get more out of your counseling department just by organizing differently. Anything else to add, Shelley?
Just thank you. This was a wonderful opportunity and it is great to work with you again.
Thank you very much, everybody. Reach out if you have questions.